Welcome to Right Talk with Mike Lee. Unfortunately, I did not take the advice of my mentor in this business, James Pokey Reese. He always told me to invite a bunch of guests because some would not show. Tonight I had 2 guests who were invited, none of which you showed. And so I'm left to talk about an issue that really is close to me and close to my heart, and that is the issue of abortions and the disproportionate effect on the black community. And hopefully, in my talk about Planned Parenthood, at some point, my wife and producer will join me to discuss the matter and maybe other political points of the day. To me, Planned Parenthood is something that this president, President Trump, seems to be kind of opposed to. He's trying to cut off abortion funding. Planned Parenthood has been denied its public service recognition in Spain. And hopefully, I haven't had a chance to check it yet, but I was hoping that this tax reform package would include the defunding of Planned Parenthood. because of its effects on the black community. Now, back in the 1960s, in the revolutionary times, I guess I'm stuck in those times. The black advocates back in the 60s opposed abortions being genocidal in nature and targeting the black community as in part of the evolutionary process of eugenics. It was a successor to eugenics. In fact, Planned Parenthood was organized in 1942 and basically absorbed the eugenics movement, which was a movement which is designed to deal with the freed slaves after slavery. Basically, the freed slaves were a problem, and the eugenics movement was a movement designed to eliminate the problem, which just means to eliminate those who were slaves or their descendants, which is me. In my introduction begins with my mom and it ends with my very best friend of more than 50 years. My mom and dad, they were the first two pictures in the intro. They were both Mississippi sharecroppers. My dad and my mom had 6 children when my dad moved from Mississippi to Ohio to better himself and to take advantage of the opportunity. My mother once told me the story about how my dad moved to Ohio. She said that one night he was digging a fence post on the plantation that they lived on, and that he said to her, "Martha, I'm leaving this GD place." But I don't think my mother thought he was going to leave that night, but he left that night with my mother's brother, Uncle Sonny. And he stayed in Ohio for 6 to 9 months, and then he went back to Mississippi and got my mother and my then 6 brothers and sisters. And my dad moved them to Ohio, and then we had 5 more children, including, Greg, Kevin, me, Daryl, and Paula. 5 of us were born in Ohio. So my mom had a Mississippi litter and an Ohio litter. And of my mother's 11 children, there were 8 boys. Now the 8 boys, 4 of us obtained doctorate degrees. Of course, I was the youngest to obtain mine, but my brother John was also important because he was the first black person to graduate from the law school at the University of Miami. I say these things about myself because frequently I get into disputes on Facebook, and I love it. Because the first thing they call me Uncle Tom, a sellout, or this or that. Lately I've been called Talking White by Louis Gray, which is funny to me because not only were my parents ex-sharecroppers, but I'm from an all-black neighborhood and went to all-black schools until I was in the 11th grade. Now, I did go to predominantly white institutions in undergraduate school at Denison and at law school at SMU. But to me, to call me like an Uncle Tom or a sellout is insane to me. Now, I have my suspicions about liberals and liberalism was actually heightened when I was in college. Because when I was in college, I was actually denied a scholarship because I was told that my grades were too high, my GPA was too high, my LSAT score was too high, that I could get into law school, which made me ask the question, what kind of lawyers do you want? You want black lawyers, but you don't want them to be so bright? What's up with that? How are you going to deny someone with my background, broke as I was, some money because my grades are too high and my LSAT score too high? That's insane. So that kind of told me that liberals really weren't interested in helping black people so much as they were perhaps in placating their own consciences. As a matter of fact, you saw my buddy in undergrad school, Richard Dinkins. Dink is a appeals court judge in Tennessee. I told Dink, I said, well, we're on the caboose of a gravy train. And when the gravy train leaves, we have to find out what we're going to do when we get engaged in trench warfare. Now, I think Dink and I, we had disputes for 4 years, but he's a good brother. And like most African Americans, he's probably Democrat. I don't know. He hasn't told me one way or the other. If I had to bet my money, I'd bet that he voted. I know he voted for Obama. A lot of people voted for Obama because they thought he was black. But I didn't see things. I look at things really, I tried and I hope I look at things from a principled standpoint. I don't care what color you are. In fact, some of the greatest influences in my life have been people who were not black. Specifically, I think mainly of Bob Klotz, who was a great man, great baseball coach, pain in the ass, but a real good guy, and his son Bobby. I hope Bobby gets to see this. I got to get Bob in my beginning collide somewhere because he was important in my life. In that, from him, I joined the baseball team at age 5. And there were 2 blacks on the team, Tim Hoyles and myself. And Bob didn't care about, I played the same position his son played, which was catcher. But Bob did not care about that. He cared about what you did on the field. And what I learned from him was it's performance that counts, not skin color. Now, that's not to say that I haven't experienced racism or prejudice in any way. If you're black and in America, you probably have. But it's not I don't have that hatred or that fear. I believe that most African Americans have a kind of fear of white people, but they won't say it, they'll never admit it because they'll be all stand up and all bad and all that stuff. But I think in all honesty, it's nothing unusual about being uncomfortable about or with someone with whom you don't deal with all the time. But if you deal with people as humans, then perhaps some of that reticence that you might experience might not be as bad as it comes out. Now, I believe that Planned Parenthood is not a good thing for the black community. When I moved to Austin, interestingly, it was pointed out to me by the late Dr. Allen Johnson, who used to work at Houston-Tillotson, that the Planned Parenthood facility was located right across the street from Houston-Tillotson. I haven't had a chance to see if one was located across the street from UT or where one is located at UT. But when I rode down Chacon one day, I did notice that Planned Parenthood is right across the street from Houston-Tillotson. And in the movie, My Alpha 21, it points out that many Planned Parenthood, many abortion clinics are located disproportionately in or near areas of black people or Hispanics. And that this is no accident. One of the things that interested me as an attorney was to learn that before abortion was legalized, abortions were disproportionately performed in the white community, but that after it became legalized, it became disproportionate in the black community. In that way, it seems an attempt, kind of a left-hand attempt at genocide to me. Now, in the early 60s, Jesse Jackson saw that Planned Parenthood as an organization as promoting black genocide. But when he ran for president, they threw some money at him. And then it became about a woman's right to choose. Now, I was in law school when all this women's lib thing got really, really strong. And I was wondering whose right to choose, what woman? They're African American women, they're Caucasian women. And in my law school would not be an example because there were only like 5 black students in law school anyway. But there were a lot of Caucasian women running around making a lot of noise about equality, which I thought was interesting because white women had to work in a two-family household for the first time. Black women had worked as domestics for years. My mother worked as a domestic. As a matter of fact, many of the adult women in my community when I was growing up in Lincoln Heights, Ohio, many of them worked as domestics, cleaning the house and ironing for white people and things like that. And so when this movement came along talking about equality and equal rights, because white women had to enter the workplace, that wasn't nothing. Working for black women was nothing new. They always worked. And so I wondered, well, who's this movement really about? And when Hillary talked about the glass ceiling, I think that many companies, because hiring an African-American woman eliminates to attack 2 minorities, attack the black minority and the women at the same time. So in many cases, women who are black are able to get higher paying jobs in the corporate world because they help eliminate two numbers. And this kind of keeps the black man in a kind of subservient position, not subservient, but he's not necessarily the financial head of the household as might be preferred. I also noticed that noticed that it was important to learn that in the 1940s and 50s, that black families were more solid, so to speak. You were apt to find more two-parent households, but that with all these liberal movements, we now have a situation where many black households are headed by a female rather than a male. And so what we've had is a breakdown of the black family. I believe that we no longer have separate and unequal societies and schools. We have separate and unequal families. And this along with the prison pipeline, which is obvious, has had a very negative effect on the black community. And I would hope that process and that trend would begin to reverse itself. I am probably the president's least known strong supporter because I believe that the conservative values were used and were the way to make America great. I think America was made great by slavery, number one, and conservative values, number two. Now, number one, slavery is out, at least involuntary slavery. You can volunteer to be a slave. But that leaves conservative values. And I believe that if the black community, particularly the black family, will return to the conservative values, which are probably promoted mostly in the Baptist churches, which is what I was raised in. I now attend Eastside Church of Christ here in Austin. But most black churches are pretty conservative in their approach to social issues. But that's not how most people in the black community vote. I think they vote the way they vote because they think the liberals tell black people that they like them, that they're their friend. Now, I don't know about most other people, but I don't care whether you're my friend or not. I'd rather be respected than be liked. I think that respect is a much more solid foundation than affection. And I believe many African Americans sell out for affection because they think it's important to have white people like them. Now, I went to Denison for 4 years. I went to SMU for 3 years. I don't know if the white people there liked me or not. Out of 750 students, some liked me, some didn't. But it really doesn't matter. What matters is not whether people like you. What matters is whether or not you are willing and able to perform. And many times this comes down to a matter of personal commitment, a matter of personal fight, because it wasn't easy. Law school was not an easy thing to complete. In fact, when I speak to people about other people interested, they say they're interested in going to law school, I always tell them I am not the one to talk to because I don't have any fond memories whatsoever of law school, none. But it was a good place to prepare to live the rest of my life because I know that A, you have to work hard, B, you have to pray hard, and C, I tend to play hard as a break. Now, there are quite a few issues going on nowadays. I think, I hope my producer will join me to discuss some of this madness that's going on now, particularly about this, all these sexual dalliances that elected officials are having. I hate to see what's happening to John Conyers, even though he's a Democrat and a sellout, like all the rest of them on the Congressional Black Caucus, who hadn't done a darn thing for the black community. I don't know if they proposed a major bill since they've been there. And he's the longest serving person in the Congress. And I haven't heard of a bill with his name on it in 30 years. but I think they should leave the man alone. I saw a video of him I watch CNN because I like to see what the Communist News Network is up to. I watch Fox sometimes. I read Fox News, but I kind of watch CNN. I like to know what the other side is thinking. I guess it's part of my legal training. But I saw a video clip of John Conyers, and in my heart, I just believe they should leave the man alone, and I believe that he should quietly retire. I really do. At 88 and what he's gone through, enough is enough. Now, I have a film clip on the Marfa video that I hope you watch a part of, and after that, I'll make a few comments, hopefully. Maybe my guest, Kennard Wright, may show up. There's no telling. But if I could see the video, and after the video clip, maybe my producer will join me, and I won't have to sit here by myself and run off at the mouth.
Pro-revolution, there would never have been a call for the legalization of abortion, and you would have never heard the terms population control and family planning. The fact is that had slavery never existed, Planned Parenthood would not exist today.
We need to remember that over 60 years ago, a man who could today be called the father of modern-day eugenics proposed that population control clinics be concentrated in minority neighborhoods. And now today, the vast majority of Planned Parenthood clinics are located in our neighborhoods. Are we really so naive to believe that this is all a coincidence? We all know that drugs, alcohol, and tobacco are devastating, especially in the Black community. We know that the big corporations target us with the ads and the marketing campaigns. And yet, we don't notice that Planned Parenthood is doing the very same thing. We need to pay attention to the fact that in the 1960s, when we as African Americans began to demand our civil rights, for the first time in American history, there began a widespread cry in our government for legalized abortion. Was that coincidence too? Or could it be that when we said we would no longer sit on the back of the bus, a place was being reserved for us down at the abortion clinic?
For most people,
I think that Alveda King, who is the daughter of Martin Luther King, touched very strongly on something I feel very strongly about, which is Planned Parenthood. And my support for the president was based partly on his conservative views and partly on his efforts and intention of defunding at least the abortion aspect of Planned Parenthood. Planned Parenthood is simply, in my view, simply a sophisticated way of eliminating the Black population. Jesse Jackson saw it this way early, but he flipped later. And I believe Obama was of the same right, pro-choice. Anyone tells you pro-choice, as far as I'm concerned, pro-choice means anti-Black. Thank God my producers are about to join me and probably chew me out because we don't agree on everything, especially politics. She was born and raised Democrat, as was I should have. It just missed me. It's just that when I was in high school at age 17, when being conservative used to mean you were for gradual change, and being liberal means you change and see what happens. I decided it was best to. I thought gradual change was best, and so I have always been a conservative. But that's not the case with my wife. She was.
I was a Democrat until about 2
She was a Democrat until she got in the wrong tax bracket. Until she found out she was paying for other people's lives.
That had a lot to do with it, for sure. But I didn't even think about becoming a Republican until I met you, actually. And just going around to the different organizations and hearing people talk about values. And then I realized that the values of the Republican Party are more in line with my values. And I didn't realize that before. Because a lot of times we tend to go through life not questioning. You know, things happen. We're born into certain things. Our families pretty much groom us to be a certain way. And that's the way I was. I was groomed to be a Democrat until I realized that how I felt about abortion and just pretty much a lot of other things that I just don't agree with now as far as Democrats.
Well, working as Director of Outreach for the Travis County Republican Party has been interesting. It's been an interesting adventure with you.
Right.
It's caused us to have to reach out and interact with people from Hispanic groups, people from Asian groups. And in those interactions, what I've gathered is those persons who embrace American values of hard work, education, family,
Right.
they seem to do better than the people in my own community
Right.
who don't embrace those views.
What I've realized is that African Americans, which we both are, black, whatever you want to call us, we have become so complacent that we feel that everybody is supposed to give us something. That we no longer have to work for anything. You know, there's welfare, there's just all kinds of organizations that give us things to keep us quiet. And what you and I talk about all the time is the way our parents were, and I heard you mention that earlier. Parents and grandparents. When I grew up, my parents and my mom and my grandparents worked for a living. They worked for everything they got. They didn't sit around. I never remember them saying, I'm just going to sit here and wait for somebody to give me something.
Welfare was something to be avoided.
Right.
It's like, I don't want to be on welfare.
Right, right. That's true. They, you know, nobody in my family wanted to be on welfare. It's not something that we aspire to. You know, it's like you go to work, you make a living, you pay your way, but I never remember hearing anybody in my family say, no, I want somebody to give me something. I paid my way through college and nobody paid it for me. It took me a long time to pay off the debts, but I made it, I did it myself. And that's the only way I really knew how. I didn't even think about going out and asking somebody else for money. You know, I paid for it.
Well, you know, I like to try to keep things real, and I think about how it was that we came up in our neighborhood. Now, we were from the poorest of neighborhoods, but we kind of didn't know that.
Right.
Because everybody was equally poor. So we just went to school and did what we did. But as young men, not young men, as adolescents, you babysat. I picked blackberries and got my jewels ate up. We stole apples and sold candy apples on the corner. We picked apples at the apple orchard and made candy apples and sold them. We shoveled snow in the winter. We raked leaves in the fall. We hustled.
Right.
We hustled pop bottles.
That's right.
We hustled so many pop bottles one time. Let's see. Tony Kilgore, me and the Springer gang. We bought a tent and all kind of camping equipment. From bottles we hustled. Blackberries that we sold.
Mm-hmm.
And now you don't get that because of perhaps the absence of a family structure. But most of the people in our neighborhoods, they had, you know, your grandmother and your grandfather, my mother and my dad. Most people, except for those who lost their parents, who lived with their grandparents who were together.
Mm-hmm.
But that structure and that sense of community and that love that we had has been lost.
Also that fear. You had that fear that you knew if you messed up or if you got in trouble, then somebody in your family was going to beat your behind.
Well, you know, we had lower sub and upper sub. If you did something in the lower sub, by the time you got home, your mama in the upper sub heard about it, so you got taxed in the lower sub and you got taxed when you got home.
And back in the day, other people could spank somebody's kids if they got in trouble.
Without getting
you
sued.
didn't have to
Without
wait until
getting
you got
sued.
home. You know, if somebody knew my grandparents or my mom and I got in trouble, that was it. You know, so you were in fear of getting in trouble you didn't want to get in trouble. But kids nowadays, they have no fear.
Well, I think-
nothing's going to happen to them.
Remember there was that T-shirt that said "No Fear"? Who was that? Which rap star made that famous?
I have no idea.
Oh, the one that boy who was an agent that messed up Ricky Williams' contract.
I don't know.
I know it was him though. He had the "No Fear,"
I don't know.
and that was the problem because right now, because of the liberal insanities on the court, insane fools. I call them fools because y'all fools. If you're gonna put kids in charge, you can divorce your parents. All this kind of madness.
Also, kids having kids, trying
Kids
to
having
raise
kids.
kids.
But that is all part, to me, of the breakdown of the family structure.
Right.
Which, and when you break down the family, you break down the community. And what has happened is we have broken communities along with the broken families.
Right.
And that is, I see the main problem in the black community. Now, with what the president's trying to do, I kind of like it because perhaps it'll force us to deal with each other. Because the fact of the matter is, where we grew up in Lincoln Heights, we were surrounded by white communities.
Right.
We grew up during the end of segregation.
Right.
That's why Timmy and I desegregated Woodline's baseball team. Me, Timmy, Jamie, Jerry Crowley, Gary Crowley, Steve Waller. There's just a few of us.
Right.
Woodline had two teams. And what Bob did, Bob got the biggest car dealership in Cincinnati to sponsor our baseball team. And when he was talking to Mr. Sweeney, when he was negotiating with Mr. Sweeney, he took Timmy out down there with his son. I remember sitting in the room, they sitting there talking about that stuff. And I'm thinking to myself, why Bob bring us down here? We don't know anything to do but play. Timmy and Bobby were playing. I was just watching he and Mr. Sweeney, seeing what was going on. And so I kind of knew what was going on. But one thing I did not know until recently when Bobby posted a picture of Bob when he was in the Army. I didn't know Bob was a catcher. So that catcher's mitt I picked up at the first practice I went to when I didn't have a glove was actually meant for Bobby. And so what I was doing was I was competing with the coach's son for a position.
And you didn't know it at the time.
I didn't know it and didn't care. I just wanted to play baseball. But Bobby, we had a pitcher named Steve Waller. I call him Old Lefty. We fuss on Facebook sometimes. But
You fuss with everybody on Facebook, but go ahead.
But Lefty, Steve had a hell of a curve. And really, Steve told me recently, in the last 6 months, he told me, he said, Michael, you were the best catcher I ever had. He said, I was the only one who could handle his curve. Because he had a curve that was out of this world. He held the strikeout record at Princeton until Timmy came along. Hell of a pitcher, hell of a guy too. But in competing with Bobby, and the way it turned out, Bob made specialists of us. I was like a utility man. I didn't know that's what they called it. But I played catcher, I played second, I played short, and third if I had to. Anywhere but pitching and first base I could play. But that's what Bob did with me. But I didn't know it was called a utility man until I watched the Reds and saw Leo Cardenas and all those other guys. I said, oh, that's what I do. Then I understood. But sometimes if Stan missed the game or Stan was unavailable, Bob would put me as a first base coach. And I didn't know that I had any intelligence at all. I knew I had a little bit. But I didn't know I was looked at that way until I went to the reunion about 2-3 years ago. And we were at the banquet that we were having, and Bobby Klotz, Bob's son, stands up and says, Michael was always the intellectual in the group, and I thought, I was? Is that what y'all said? I didn't know that. I was just me. We were just playing baseball as far as I was concerned.
So let's talk about some of these current events. You mentioned that earlier before I came into the room.
I think they should leave John Conyers alone. I tell you that at home, and I say, I hope they should leave him alone.
Well, I
Leave that
totally
man alone.
disagree. If he's guilty, they need to put him in jail. I don't
That's a
care how
woman
old
thing.
he is. I don't care how old he is. If he did something wrong, he needs to go to jail.
He need to leave that man alone.
No, they don't need to leave that man alone.
He's a Democrat. He's a sellout.
And see, women
Kiss
are a lot.
action.
Women are a lot. Well, I won't say all women.
Y'all
All I can
just
do is
mean.
speak for
Y'all
myself.
just mean. Y'all just getting even.
You know, these men been running around and touching on people and feeling on people and doing things they shouldn't do, and now they're being called out on it.
Yeah,
you
but
know,
how you
women
know-
are
how you
tired
know-
of that nonsense.
But how you know God didn't make it that way? God made it like that.
No, don't blame it on him.
No, see, I think women think men are supposed to be like them.
No. You should
There-
not.
there- there
You
are
should
some-
not
there-
touch
there are-
someone who doesn't want to be
There are
touched.
some men like that, but they have other men.
You should not touch somebody who doesn't want to be touched, and you should not proposition people when they don't want to be propositioned.
don't-
And some men don't have boundaries. They don't know the difference. There are boundaries.
They don't tell you about these rules when you're like 5. That's what they need to be teaching.
It
in
depends
school,
on the
Not
parents.
sex education.
Some parents talk about those things, and kids know boundaries.
What I learned most about sex, I learned on the street.
Well, see, that was in your house. In my house, we learned boundaries. You don't go around touching people.
Yeah, but your house was full of girls.
Well, see,
Pretty girls.
that's it. So we learned different things. I don't
You-
know.
Boys and girls are supposed to learn different things.
But we had boys in our home also, and they knew not to go around touching
Terry,
touching
Come on
people
now.
inappropriately.
Ken might have heard it, but Terry didn't hear it.
He heard it. He probably just chose
No,
not to
no,
do it.
Terry didn't hear it.
He probably just chose not to
I
do it.
guarantee you, if I went home and looked up T today, I'll tell my cousin Michael, Mikael, to catch up with T. Say, did you? I guarantee you, T didn't hear that part.
He heard it. He just chose not to do
Nah,
it.
he didn't hear it.
Yeah, he did.
He and Ken were two completely different
That's
animals.
true. That would be true. That would be true.
But it seems to me that women want men to be like them, and that's fine.
I don't know that that's true.
That's okay. There's some sensitive guys out there.
You
They're
know,
at all the gay bars.
he is not one of them. Let me tell you that. He is not one of them.
Everybody knows that.
No, you can be, though, when you want to be.
Who?
You.
I've never been accused of being nice.
You're nice to me when you want to be.
I'm nice to you all the time because it's taxation if I don't. But that's sometimes I don't care about the taxation. You know how that is.
Just
But-
tell it like it is.
Politically speaking, I just think that number one, please leave John Conyers alone.
No, if he did it, then he needs to go to jail. But go ahead.
Trump won't say anything about John Conyers, and I pray that he won't. Please don't. Let him go. Let that go.
All right. What else? A lot of things going on.
Well, I know. Well, I'm interested in this tax reform bill. I hate that I'm behind on that. I went to a kickoff tax reform event in Hayes County in San Marcos, right next to your job. And
Because I was invited, but I couldn't go, so you went, and that's what we do. We fill in for each other, and a lot of times we go to the same events. It just depends.
well, as outreach director for the Travis County Republican Party, the black populations in Central Texas, they situate in pockets, which is not unusual or to be unexpected. But my thing, as outreach director for the Austin area, is to work in Travis, Hayes, Bastrop, Williamson,
Caldwell.
and Caldwell. Now, the governor, in his campaign, has taken a field approach, which is kind of what I'm doing. I'm kind of like the Central Texas field, so to speak. Taking a field approach, but personally, I'm disappointed right now with TCRP in that their black outreach effort is non-existent, really.
All right. It seems like they've kind of backed off from outreach.
I went to when I went to the tax reform kickoff event in San Marcos, the lady who does Hispanic outreach told me that a lady in San Antonio asked her, well, what's happening with black outreach? But I haven't followed up on that. But it's disappointing to me because I expected more and better from the present state chair,
Right.
who used to be my county chair, which is James Dickey,
Right.
a good friend of mine. I guess we're friends. We might not be friends after night, but that's the way it goes sometimes. I believe in telling the truth. He knows that. He's a
But do you
brother
think
in
it's so
love.
much on him or more just local? Because it seems like when he was local, things were happening.
Well, when he was local,
But now the
like
other people who have taken over don't seem to be as involved with outreach as he was.
Well, I think I won't know until after Wednesday what the deal is.
Okay.
But I know that the sentiment is there. I've talked to Matt. I know that the sentiment is there.
Mm-hmm.
But it's kind of, and I know I have the support of the executive directors. I know that. Gary has been on our show, as a matter of fact.
Yes.
He'll probably be back soon.
I hope so.
But I think I'm kind of disappointed because I know I went to the what was that, Association of Association of Political Consultants convention or conference a couple of weeks ago, and the Democrats actually have hired someone to do candidate recruitment statewide. And I was thinking to myself today, why haven't we done that?
Right.
We've been successful without that, but it's getting to the point where we need to fight. We need to compete, and I think particularly here in Travis County.
Mm-hmm.
But I said a prayer about 9 to 12 months ago, that this becomes the political center of the universe.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of is. It's a sanctuary. It's an insane sanctuary city, and all that stuff. And I believe that what goes, as goes Travis County, so can go the state, and so can go the nation.
Mm-hmm.
Because this is a liberal. We're outnumbered 2-1 here.
Right.
I mean, it's just the way it is. But I talk to my baby brother a lot about odds. And I tell him, I say, well, Daryl, actually, we don't exist. The guy from a family of 11 with 8 boys and 3 girls that produces 4 doctorates, there is no statistical measure for us. We're a statistical anomaly. We don't exist. So we're supposed to be able to do the impossible. We don't exist. So, who cares about odds?
Well, I think a lot of people who grew up in our neighborhood don't exist. Because when you
Bobby Whitehead doesn't exist.
and I get a lot of this from what I do, because I'm the deputy center director at Gary Job Corps, which is the largest Job Corps center in the nation. And when I see the young people who come through Job Corps, and you and I talk about this all the time, I think we have raised a couple of generations of young people who feel like they can do everything. They can do anything they want. And I think that's the wrong message.
They've been lied to.
That's the wrong message to send to people, to say you can be anything you want to be. Because you can't.
Ability matters.
Ability matters. And a lot of our young people get disappointed somewhere along the way when they find out, wow, I'm not going to be president of the United States. Or I'm 5'6", I'm not going to be a pro basketball player.
I did that.
I
was a
mean,
good
at some
basketball
point,
player.
we have to be honest with people and help them be the best they can be in whatever they can do well. They have to find their passion, and they have to find out what they can do well. And a lot of young people nowadays, they were never taught that. And I mean, I'm just gonna put this out there, because a lot of the young people who come to Job Corps have a high school diploma.
A piece of
But
paper.
then they have a piece of paper. But then when we give them an assessment, they only read and do math on 3rd and 4th grade level. So who gave them that high school diploma and why? Because then we have to convince them that, no, you know, we can teach you more. We want you to do better. We want you to read beyond a 3rd and 4th grade level, because you're not going to be successful with that. But I have a high school diploma. Why do I need to do more? So hopefully folks will understand that you can't continue to teach that way. You have to find out what young people are good at and try to steer them in the right direction and not give them all this false hope that they can be professional athletes, or that they're going to be some big rap star, or they're going to be president of the United States. Everybody can't do that.
Speaking of which, when I was, I left Lincoln Heights High School after 10th grade because I wasn't growing. I played basketball pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the guys I played basketball with, Gay, Lofell, Wendy, Reese, Dog. These guys won state championships. Now, when I forged my parents' signature and transferred myself because I wasn't growing, they thought I was crazy. I knew they were going to win championships. So I walked away from that at 15, which is not an easy thing to do.
Right.
I was having fun at Lincoln Heights. Big fun. But I felt that my future was in academics. I wasn't going to play in the NBA. I realized that.
Mm-hmm.
I was, 5 feet tall, 5'2", pushing it, weighing 100 pounds. You're not going anywhere. You're not playing sports anywhere. But as far as playing basketball, I used to play with Lofell, Gay, all those. Lofell played pro football. Tootie played pro football.
Mm-hmm.
The guys I came through with pro athletes. Reese went to, where did he end up? He ended up in Oklahoma, didn't he?
I'm not
So
sure.
he turned down some big scholarships. Joe Key turned down some scholarships. Guys on the bench got college scholarships. Price went to Vanderbilt, Tennessee State. Dog went to Wilberforce. I mean, the whole daggone team got basketball scholarships. Gay played basketball at Colorado State. Played basketball and football. But these were some super athletes I was with.
Right.
My skills were just about on their level, but my height wasn't
Height
happening.
wasn't.
It wasn't happening. And so I figured that out at 15. So when I walked away at 15, I knew I was missing some good times. But I knew what my future was, and it wasn't playing basketball.
Right.
But what I think is sad is the liberal lie that you can do anything you want. Ability matters.
It does.
And just quit lying to people. If a guy reads on the 3rd grade level, he's probably not going to medical school.
Right.
It's just the way it is.
And just like now,
There's nothing wrong with it.
we have a college program, but we recruit young people who are reading on a 3rd and 4th grade level, but then we're expected to get enough of those young people to put into a college program. That's a challenge because the majority of them are not college material.
That's impossible. Everybody is not college material, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Right. Because there are other things that people can be good at, and we need people to do everything.
There's nothing wrong with having a good trade, and that's one of the things I wish that they would put back in education. Now my brother Kevin can do anything. Smart as hell. Can draw. He can draw. He was a math, physics major, or something in college, something crazy.
He's an awesome chess player.
Yeah.
He can sing.
Tell him to take him though. but he's a bright guy. One of the smartest people I know. He and Charlie. He's two of the smartest people I know. That's my brother. That's a career criminal. I love him though. He's fun. It's fun to have a brother who spent over 50 years in jail. He can tell you something.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean that he's not intelligent,
Right.
because he's very intelligent. He just
And
made the wrong choices.
He's just Charlie. But sometimes, he and I look at things differently. And if I want a different point of view, I'll call him and ask him for his point of view.
Right.
Because I like to know how other views are, what they are, how to look at something. It educates me.
Right.
I'm always trying to learn. That's my thing. It's just learn. I just like knowing stuff. I've always liked knowing stuff. Used to get me in trouble in elementary school. Used to get me hated. Because I don't know what your experience was, but in Lincoln Heights,
No, you know what my experience
if
was.
you got
It was
if
the
you got
same.
if you got A's,
It was the same.
you messed up the curve.
Yeah. You know I went through the same thing.
You know, I didn't know anything about a curve. I didn't know anything. Okay, Michael, don't forget about the curve. Nobody told me. I was trying to get them all right. You make me sick. And it wasn't until what? When I talked about your Aunt Nathalene who was in my class? Getting good grade, yeah. I thought that's what I was supposed to do.
It was not popular to be smart.
It was outright interesting. And then we had my favorite teacher was the proving ground. Florence Kelly was the truth. And she just, she was the meanest teacher in the whole world. And her methods, if she employed them now, she would be jailed.
That's right.
But if you survived Miss Kelly, you could survive whatever this world throw at you, academically. But what I learned from her was to work hard and do your best, which is what my mom used to say.
Yeah.
My mom used to say, did you do your best? She didn't say, did you score like everybody else? Did you mess up the curve? My mother didn't ask me that. She said, did you do your best? And what I learned is I just tried hard. And when I was in law school with some real brilliant people. I mean, I'm sitting in class, you know, this material racking my brain. And there's a guy sitting next to me, stone cold alcoholic, who's sitting over there memorizing everybody on the roster of every team in the NFL, the college they went to, and when they graduated. And living off trust fund money. Who tells me, man, life really hard, man. I say, yeah. How hard is it? Man, me and my wife only go out 2 or 3 times a week. He's talking to someone who's never been out to eat.
And who has no idea where his next meal is going to come from.
A guy who walked around for 2 weeks in law school, walked around with 10 cents in my pocket for 2 weeks. But he's got it hard because he and his wife only go out 2 times a week. And I'm competing with that. But I didn't care about it. That's the way it goes. But fortunately, I had a good buddy, Charles Howard, who hooked me up in Dallas, really. When I went there, he was the only person I knew there. I only know him through the mail. I didn't know him to look at him. But he introduced me to this lady, Osi Kazee, who saved my life. I love Osi. She fed me, she fed me second semester of my first year, all of my second year pretty much. I used to eat over there. Because I didn't have money. I didn't have the money. But this guy next to me, we're going out twice a week. I'm competing with him. But when you're trying and struggling and fighting, and it's something that I regret that children don't have in large part today, and that you can only develop grit by facing and dealing with hard times. And now I believe the kids think you're not supposed to have a hard time. It's supposed to be easy.
Everything's supposed to be given to you. You're not supposed to have to work hard for anything. Everything's supposed to be given to you.
I listen to you talk about this, the students down there at Job Corps. Man, they got it sweet, man.
But they don't appreciate it because it's all given to them. They don't have to work for anything. So a lot of them, unfortunately, do not appreciate having that free education. They don't have to buy food. They don't have to buy clothes. They don't have to pay for an apartment. I mean, everything in Job Corps is free. The taxpayers pay for it, but it's free to the participants, to the students. But then so many of them do not appreciate what's given to them.
I just really, my hope and my prayer is that the community as a whole prosper, and that the black community in particular get itself back together. And I believe a president like Trump, his policies, if he follows conservative policies, it will make and force us to deal with each other, which is simply what happened in Lincoln Heights. We had everything but a cleaners. Then we had to go down to Tony's and Lockham to go to cleaners.
Yeah.
But you had Hilltop Market. So Noah had a store. The Smiths was right next to that. That little strip right there. You had Waltz down there on
Yeah, we had everything we
Jackson.
needed right there in the community.
a drugstore.
We had everything we needed.
And now it's been taken off the Google map and it's going to be an unincorporated area.
Right.
Unless it's annexed by Woodline. I hear the upper Southern annexed by Woodline and lower Southern annexed by
But
Locke.
that's what happens in the black community, in a lot of black communities. You know, people just, because welfare and all those kind of things came in.
Section 8.
Yeah, and all that. We still can't get, even on Facebook, I mean, we can't get people to understand that those types of programs have destroyed the black community. They don't understand that. They don't want to hear it. And it's unfortunate because until our people learn that those programs destroyed us as a people, then it's just going to continue to happen. It's not going to change.
I don't know. I think there's a chance, given the current climate of
And you're going to have to keep talking because I'm the producer. I got to
have to
go
go.
in here and get ready to
gonna leave
close
me out
everything
here all
out.
by my lonesome.
Yeah, I got to go and close everything out.
Okay, it's nice having you. I hope you don't send me a bill for your appearance.
I don't know. I might.
Well, the best looking part of the show just left, so I apologize. You have to deal with me now. I hope that this program eventually can help to enlighten and educate people and get them to look at things a little different way. I'm going to begin a series. I guess it harkens back to my English major days of Man's Inhumanity to Man. And for that reason, I wanted to talk a little bit about Planned Parenthood today because I think it is one example of man's inhumanity toward man. It's having evolved from the eugenics movement, which was to deal with the slavery problem, the release of the end of slavery problem, which is black people. I hope to do a series on although slavery was abolished as a legal matter in the United States, there is still slavery going on today that no one's saying anything about and should, and I wish that you would. Again, I apologize that my guests were unable to show, and I hope I didn't bore you too much. I want to thank you very much for joining me, and hope that you will join my next show, which will be a bit more interesting and with a few more guests than just me. Again, I thank the Travis County Republican Party for its support